The Museum of Contemporary Art Denver and the Denver Center for the Performing Arts present Mixed Taste, tag team lectures on unrelated topics. And now, introducing tonight's unlikely pairing, Cowboys and the Overview Effect. Please welcome tonight's host, Sarah Baie.
We held the show a little bit because tonight we have a liquor license and we can sell you alcohol, which is worthy of cheering about, this is for sure. Welcome to Mixed Taste 2022. I'm Sarah Baie. I'm the Director of Programming at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and I co-curated this season with my friends and co-producers Charlie Miller and Bretton Zola. And we are thrilled to see you tonight. Tonight we have a special guest in the house. Adam Lerner, the creator of Mixed Taste, is here with us tonight. So let's give a warm round of applause to Adam. Where are you, Adam? There he is, right there in the middle. It's always nice to see you. We're glad to have you back in Denver. So we're glad to be here at the Holiday Theater, and welcome, and let's get started. In order to have our viewers at home be able to participate along with the Q&A with our viewers here in the theater, we have a second screen experience. So if you see the QR code here, if you point your phone at that code, it will take you to Slido, and you can follow along. You can ask questions with that. If you're having trouble seeing the code, we passed out some cards. You can find one of those, or you can go to slido.com and type in Mixed Taste, all one word. And you should be on a web page that has a couple of tabs at the top of your screen where you can participate with the ideas chat. You can take polls or submit questions, and we're going to try it out together right now. So here's a little word cloud that we're going to do. You can go to the Slido experience, and we're going to pretend that this Mixed Taste audience, all of you here in the theater and those of you who are watching from home, have been selected to be voyagers together to a distant star. And we're going to take a spaceship to the outer reaches of the galaxy, and you can bring any one thing that you would like from our home planet to share with aliens along the way. What do you bring? All right, I see we're opening strong with cheese, mezcal, your harmonica, tacos, clarinet, green chili, chocolate, my dog. Yes, I also would bring my dog. Bourbon. Bourbon is coming up a lot, but cheese is really big. Whoever selected cheese, you led really strong there. Wine, Twinkies, peanut butter, macaroni and cheese. Luther Vandross, the greatest hits. Ginger beer. We've got knives and a hula hoop. Whoever is bringing knives is really forward thinking for a lot of different reasons. Karl Marx, Lassie. I think you're getting the idea. All right, well, that is great. You've all got your second screens going. This is fantastic. Velcro, toilet paper. All right. And now let's get started. Mixed Taste is a mashup series where we bring together two experts who each predict on different topics, and then we have a live question and answer session where we take questions on both topics together at the same time. The rules are very simple. The first speaker speaks for 20 minutes, then the second speaker speaks for 20 minutes. During the first part of the program, we allow no connections between the topics, but during the Q&A, anything can happen. So between the talks tonight, we're going to play a quick game, and at the end of the evening, we've invited local poet Bianca Mikhan to tie the whole night together. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the night, who will be presenting to you all on Cowboys. Nora Abrams is the Mark G. Falcone Director of the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver. Prior to this, she was MCA Denver's chief curator. She came from the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Gray Art Gallery at NYU. Since arriving in Denver in 2010, she has organized over 40 exhibitions and authored or contributed to over a dozen accompanying publications. She's shown Jean-Michel Basquiat, Singa Ngugi, Francesca Woodman, and Tara Donovan, of many, many others. Tonight, she is talking to us about Cowboys. So please give a warm welcome to Nora Abrams.
Hello, everyone. Sarah, thank you for that introduction. And once again, so happy that our dear old friend, Adam Lerner, is here tonight. I also want to acknowledge that my interest in talking about cowboys is because I am co-curating an exhibition of the very same title with Miranda Lash, who is also joining us tonight. So the exhibition will be opening next fall at MCA Denver. So I welcome any thoughts and feedback because the checklist is not finalized. So please do share. All right, let's kick things off. It helps if I kick things off, I think. Okay, so Cowboy, from reality to myth and back again. And I think there's no better image to launch this conversation than this photograph by Richard Prince. So I want to begin with this really deadpan conceptual work, which is a copy, that is, it's a photograph, of another copy, a Marlboro cigarette ad, of a myth, the cowboy. It is, in fact, a copy of an idea, a copy of an invention whose hazy and grainy texture implies the fuzziness of a memory or a nostalgic recapture of a particular moment in the past. This signature image by Prince attests to how entrenched the image of the cowboy remains in the popular mindset, as much as it affirms the free circulation of such tropes across popular media. The intention of a work like this is to make us feel like this was real, that it did exist, that the feelings of a man taming animals, taming nature, looking unafraid before a vast unknown is in fact honest, accurate, and candid. But is it? Tonight, we are going to explore a brief history of the cowboy and how this figure came to embody so decisively and persuasively a symbol of an American male hero. Our discussion will start with some basic facts about the cowboy, how he emerged and could be accurately characterized at the time of his heyday, which is really the latter part of the 19th century. From here, we'll move quickly through the 20th century and end up in our present moment with numerous interpretations of the cowboy as put forward by artists working today. The functional role of a cowboy emerged mainly after the Civil War and was sparked primarily by the cattle industry. In the years immediately following the Civil War, the West represented a new frontier, right? One that was vastly different from the devastation of the battlefields in the American South, as well as the industrializing urban East Coast. The cattle industry in the 1860s was largely unregulated, and the landscape of the Midwest and the Mountains West regions offered open spaces, despite, of course, the presence of thousands of indigenous people and communities. But nonetheless, the concept of open spaces for moving cattle, specifically from Texas to the railroad cities that would send it all to the burgeoning urban centers in the Midwest and on the East Coast. The big open spaces of Texas, the Midwest and Mountains West regions, required that cattle be accompanied, overseen, and corralled. Tough, exhausting labor in extreme weather conditions, along paths to marketplaces and/or railroad connections that were only in the process of being charted. It was, for the most part, isolating, lonely, grueling, and dangerous. These range cowboys herded up cattle at roundups, branded them, and sold them. The Homestead Act of 1862 granted land claims in 30 states. These land claims were located on the traditional or treaty lands of many Native American tribes, forcing their removal and creating a false notion of the West as a site of discovery, possibility, and economic opportunity. In the late 19th century, cattle could be sold for $30 to $40 a head, highly incentivizing the cattle ranchers to seize more land and further create this economic boom. The ever-growing open ranges for cattle grazing and legally justified removal of native tribes away from their indigenous territory and onto reservations radically shifted the landscape. the restructuring of the landscape, and really the restructuring of the natural order of the landscape, proved profitable for a small select few like Joseph McCoy, and devastating for both animals, for water systems, and for the communities that had historically occupied these spaces. During the 25 years post-Civil War that witnessed this explosive growth in the cattle ranching industry, thousands of people, men and women of color, served as cowhands or laborers to service this growing market. And it is important to note the economic drivers that led to the diversity of the cowboy role. There was a great opportunity to provide beef to the urban centers across the country, east and west, that were themselves growing rapidly due to industrialization, immigration, and a post-war rebuilding effort. During this period, roughly 1868 to 1895, of the nearly 35,000 cowboys who supported the ranching and cattle industry, over 1/3 of them were Black or Mexican cowboys, with about a quarter of the total of African descent. Which is to say, there are thousands of real lived experiences that have not been highlighted, canonized, or passed down through popular culture. The reality is that there was a breadth of diversity across cowboy culture from the 19th century to today, but the myths, as would permeate popular culture in the late 19th through the 20th century, so the myths surrounding the cowboy did not represent the figure as such. For many cowboys, the skills and expertise that they were known for and which they utilized were learned from the Mexican vaqueros in the 18th and 19th centuries. Derived from the word vaca, Spanish for cow, the vaqueros would become renowned for their skills and adaptability as Spain expanded their North American empire westward from what is now Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. And the ranching knowledge and their outstanding roping skills of these Mexican cowboys helped to revive and rebuild the flagging ranching industry in the earlier part of the 19th century. So you have, as well, for African Americans, the cattle industry really represented one of the few chances for equal labor in a country that was increasingly closing doors to people of color. For the thousands of Black cowboys who took on this work in the 19th century, many of them had served as cattle herders during slavery and even attended to the cattle while their owners served in the Confederacy. Their training for the role, even the origin of their name in part, has roots in the economic system of slavery and is inseparable from it. As one scholar has noted, cowhands were ordinary men who possessed outdoor skills and a strong love of horses and cattle. Daily life on the range was more often hard, tedious, and lonely than filled with high adventure. But this era really only lasted about 20 years until the decline of cattle ranching. That kind of heyday of ranching, if you will, came to a rather abrupt halt in the 1880s due to a few key developments. The privatization of land, which restricted the open spaces of cattle grazing, the introduction of barbed wire fencing, which removed the need for as much oversight and corralling by cowboys, terrible weather in the late 1880s, and immigration and an influx of new farmers who privatized the open range, making the long cattle drives across states and territories moot. Ironically, though, the myth of the cowboy emerged at the very moment that the reality of the cowboy declined. So to me, what is so interesting about this cowboy figure is that and yes, for the moment, we're going to use that pronoun, his original context really changed towards the end of the 19th century, but the ideas and the values with which he was associated did not. The function of a cowboy, of course, continues today, but the environment in which we more broadly consider who a cowboy is, what the role of a cowboy is, and how a cowboy interacts with a sort of ecosystem, with animals, with landscape, and with other laborers, has not necessarily evolved over the last 140 years to reflect those changes. In many ways, the ideas surrounding the cowboy, which serve up one of the most powerful archetypes in modern history, remain fixed, seemingly impossible to dislodge from our collective or popular mindset. What I find to be so remarkable about the power and duration of the cowboy figure is that it emerged as an icon at the very moment its function shifted. The shift entailed numerous factors, too many to include here, but a couple of key things to note. After the Civil War, there was a sense of the West as a kind of Edenic landscape. Forget that there were thousands of communities already living there on this land, but it was viewed to be a different, for those from the West, from the East, it was viewed to be a different psychic space, one that was untouched, though not really, by war, devastation, and brutality. By the end of the 19th century, that had been reversed. The West was colonized. There was no longer a new frontier to be cultivated and explored by this country, in this country. The limitless possibility had been brutally contained. Industrialization swept across the Mountain West or Western Desert, and no longer was there this uncharted territory to be discovered, to be seized, and to be repurposed for Western consumers. So to summarize, the myth or the legend of the cowboy emerged precisely as the reality of the cowboy as it originally was inhabited disappeared. And really, I think the main reason for that is the proliferation of what would become the key myths surrounding the cowboy through roadshows, dime novels, and ultimately Hollywood. The answer to the question, why does this icon persist despite its factual lapses and cultural inaccuracies, is due to the advancement of an idea as perpetuated by the need to connect with a notion of national identity, a spirit of unbridled courage and freedom at a moment when everything, culturally, politically, technologically, was changing and therefore destabilizing. To hearken to an idea of bravery or independence, however fraught that might be, was a salve to the conditions of change wrought by industrialization, colonization, and resource exploitation. To conceptualize the cowboy as one who could tame and control and drive and bend an animal to his will is to metaphorically connect with a figure who is larger than life and who can wrestle literally the broader existential threats of the surrounding environment. This was the purpose of cultural icons like Buffalo Bill Cody, whose purpose through his elaborate Wild West performances and accompanying mythology was to revive or even rewrite the imagery of the West, to bring to life the concepts that were perpetuated and propagated through dime novels and periodicals, and to concretize the ideas or myths of these stories within his performances. The dime novel itself emerged toward the end of the cowboy's prominence in 1878, when the publishers Beadle and Adams launched their publishing business, which aimed at younger adult readers. Within the dime novel library, however, the cowboy didn't really emerge until 1883, just at that moment that the reality of the cowboy's functional role in ranching and the cattle industry was fading. Upon entering the popular culture mindset at this moment, through the publication of the first novel about William F. Cody, known as Buffalo Bill, the story of the cowboy, the performance of a cowboy, dislodged from fact and was replaced with fictitious tropes about cowboy culture and way of living. As one scholar has noted, Cody probably had a greater effect upon the American imagination than any other showman. The myth-building intensified due to the overlapping influences of visual art, popular imagery, and the dime novel. This poster, for example, is thought to be based on a painting by a titan of American Western art, Frederick Remington. The stereotyping of the cowboy through popular culture and entertainment also extended to other racial and ethnic historical figures. For those Native Americans who participated in the Wild West's production and traveled all over the country and across Europe performing and, in a sense, reinforcing culturally specific archetypes and behaviors, they performed in a rigorously restrictive notion of how Indigenous and Europeans both clashed and cooperated. The imagery used to perpetuate these somewhat contrived relations only reinforced the artifice of the performance. But there was also a subversiveness to the performance. For these Native American performers, they participated in the show in part to survive, to avoid being jailed or worse, but also to have an opportunity to freely practice their rituals, their traditions, and their culture, which was otherwise outlawed by the US government. The myth-making of Buffalo Bill during performances and throughout the literature, made clear through repetition and powerful visual imagery certain events that would become fact. For example, the Deadwood stagecoach became the most recognizable object in the Wild West. This scene of the stagecoach being attacked by Native Americans with Buffalo Bill leading the cavalry to the rescue was replayed at every performance of the Wild West show throughout its 30-year history. As one scholar has noted, though, perhaps the biggest discrepancy between the myth and the reality of cowboy legend was that the black cowboys, and frankly all cowboys of color, were almost totally ignored by the myth makers of the Eastern publishing houses and the Hollywood movie sets. Oops, sorry, go back. So that very cursory look at some film stills from some of the most recognized and lauded Westerns from the 20th century trade on this very kind of rather limited view of the cowboy figure. He is always a he. He is almost exclusively white and heterosexual, and he is unafraid, undaunted, and independent. The journey from Buffalo Bill's performance to the silver screen's amplification of a single type of figure, reinforced through broadsides, magazines, novels, toys, games, and ultimately the entire entertainment industry, kind of funneled and filtered out much of the historically accurate details of who this figure had been, what he had contributed, and ultimately lionized a very different figure, one that emerged from a sense of nostalgia and anxiety as much as it did from fiction and imagination. So I now want to kind of bring us back into the present day to reflect on how the mythic figure of the cowboy figures today, how artists are complicating and in many ways almost reinserting a historical record back into our conceptions of the cowboy, its historical contributions, and how cowboy culture exists today. How to honor a far more broad and diverse understanding of this role and its contribution to American history, and the narratives that define and punctuate our country's development. I'm going to start with actually work by a Canadian filmmaker named Christina Battle, who we had the great pleasure of showing this work at MCA Denver back in 2012. It is a work titled Deerfield, Colorado. And for this project, she was exploring the history of Deerfield, which is located in Weld County. This is one of the earliest African-American agricultural communities. It was founded in 1909 by O.T. Jackson, a businessman from Boulder. And while the town initially thrived and hoped to expand its commercial enterprise, it suffered significantly during the Great Depression, and by the mid-20th century, its population had dwindled to 12. It was a victim of the Dust Bowl, and now Deerfield is really a ghost town, replete with deteriorating structures redolent of its previous existence. It has been added to the National Register of Historic Spaces, which happened, I believe, in the early part of this century. American painter Amy Sherald presents here the cowboy as an icon, clothed in attire associated with cowboys and an American flag shirt. Sherald's figure asks really how Americanness, how being American can be defined, and the extent to which Black individuals are allowed to claim ownership of this Western lens of American culture. This is a still from a 3-channel video by the artist Khalil Joseph. who combines visual art, fashion, and popular music to create films that challenge linear narratives. This film, Wildcat, is a black and white film that explores past and present African-American rodeo subculture in Grayson, Oklahoma, the town formerly known as Wildcat. The film weaves together the community and its traditions while including an homage to Aunt Janet, a member who founded the town's rodeo. DJ and rapper Flying Lotus created the score that accompanies it, which itself was inspired by jazz. And the result of the entirety, if you will, is really a kind of dreamlike narrative that balances slow pans of the rodeo grounds and drives across the southern landscape with snapshots of those who have built up and continue to maintain this town. The combination of imagery and sound provides a window into the experiences of Black cowboys in America, both historically and in the present. This work, Cowboy, by Dina Lawson, is a carefully constructed image that she has created into this kind of stunning photograph that really is about decoupling the sexual appeal of the cowboy from whiteness. Her photograph shows us two young men riding at night in Georgia. They're captured on horseback, and their appearance conjures a kind of complicated legacy of the American cowboy. Though it might at first appear as though this is a documentary photograph, she actually quite tightly composes her photographs by working closely with her subjects and rigorously controlling the setting, the lighting, and the pose. Her resulting images really celebrate Black bodies in a manner that is both formally rigorous and riveting. This is a 2-channel video by the artist Kenneth Tam, whose work here really considers how Asian men have been stereotyped and evaluated against the cowboys' kind of assumptions around American masculinity. In his exploration on the expansion of the American West, this video incorporates references to the building of the U.S. Transcontinental Railroad from 1863 to 1869 and the labor strike organized by Chinese railroad workers in 1867. Silent Spikes responds to this history and also to centuries of stereotyped representation of the Asian male in media and also particularly in Western genre films. Los Angeles-based Rafa Esparza investigates histories of Latinx and queer communities, their power structures, and relationships to land, as well as traditional practices. This particular work centers on an intimate scene of Latinx men dancing in a gay bar to effectively and movingly disrupt the notion of the American cowboy as a heterosexual Anglo figure. Another artist who many are likely familiar with here, Louise Jimenez. While he was alive, his work really was about examining his heritage as a Hispanic American. He was born in El Paso, Texas, and his work often looked at life on the border, cultural assimilation, and our kind of broader relationship to the natural landscape. He often utilized vibrant colors, gravity-defying compositions to bring a heightened dynamism and a nearly cinematic quality to his work. For this particular sculpture, this represents one of his earliest monumental works and really features some of the kind of classic symbols of the American West. The vaquero on an electric blue Mustang diving toward a leaping longhorn, dramatizing in a kind of exuberant fashion one of the key aspects of a cowboy's role in capturing and taming the animal and the interconnectedness between predator and prey. Conceptual artist Mel Chin has, for many decades, created works that really focus on social justice and raising awareness around under-recognized, underrepresented narratives. This work is no different. This is called Rough Rider, and for this, he's created a roping saddle made out of barbed wire to allude to the violence that took place during the colonization and settlement of Texas. The thorned texture of the barbed wire evokes both the Catholic iconography of Jesus' crown of thorns, as much as it references the introduction of barbed wire that transformed the ranching industry in the 19th century. So the reference to both the Catholic imagery deliberately is about connecting with the colonization of Texas by the conquistadors and Catholic missionaries during the 17th and 18th centuries. I want to end tonight's discussion with a 20th century painting by the American pop artist Andy Warhol, who seemed to understand the power of an image and how it circulates in popular culture in a manner unlike his peers. He presciently recognized the emptiness of Hollywood imagery, the flatness of fame, and also its magnetic power to seduce. That he created this image in 1963 based on a film still of Elvis Presley from a 1960 film, Flaming Star, comments on the fading stardom of the king of pop, the decline of his popular currency, and invites a sense of nostalgia. Some might read that as nostalgia for an earlier Hollywood era, but I think we can also see it as a nostalgia for the conception or concept of a cowboy. It's like this is a farewell, a kind of mourning farewell to another era in filmmaking as much as it is to the era of American history that frankly never was as it had been portrayed in Hollywood. Layered on top of this silver image, another clear reference to the silver screens of the entertainment industry, Warhol is also asserting a new definition of the West. That is, Southern California, the hub of popular culture and the fabricator of imagination. Not only was the figure of the cowboy, as advanced by popular culture, never really accurate, this new definition of the West was also radically different from its historical referent. It was now a soundstage with stage sets and props. The cowboy of this new West was a pop star with a fading fan base. Warhol's mournful treatment of Elvis seems to capture the waning of multiple myths, while also acknowledging the power of those myths simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. That was wonderful. All right. Nora alluded a little bit to the mythology of cowboys, and we've got more for that for you in just a moment. We've got the Q&A open, and as a reminder, if you would like to be eligible to win tonight's prize, don't forget to put your name in any questions that you might ask. Because now it's halftime.
It's halftime.
There you go. Feel free to get up and grab another drink, another alcoholic drink if you would enjoy doing that. And we invite you to play along with our game that we have for you on your second screen. I'm going to invite tonight's poet, Bianca Mikhan, back to the stage. Please give a warm welcome for Bianca. And she's going to play along with us. All right, tonight's game is called Space Cowboys.
I've been called that before.
Somebody called
Chef's
me that.
kiss to Dele for putting together that little intro to this game. All right.
So good.
So there are a number of space-based films that feature the rugged individualist known as the cowboy. And we wanted to know how well you, Bianca, know your space cowboy films, but also how well you, audience, know the films. So we're going to quiz you on a few space cowboy films, and you can play along on your device, and we'll go through this. So,
Let's do this.
are you ready?
I'm so ready. I'm not ready at all.
Okay, so the first space cowboy that we're going to talk about tonight must save the Earth by uploading a computer virus onto the alien mothership with the help of a refurbished alien fighter ship that was recovered from another mixed taste theme, Roswell. All right.
Okay.
Was this
I'm with us.
Dave in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and she's looking at what the audience is voting. So
I am already.
Turn away.
I'm
Is this
cheating, and
Will
I agree with
Smith
most of you.
in Independence Day? Is this Brad Pitt in Ad Astra, or is this Sandra Bullock in Gravity?
I would love to say it's Sandra Bullock just because that's a fun answer to that. I'm going with Will Smith. I am. I'm influenced, but also it's feeling right.
Okay, so as we saw, can we bring back up what the audience thought for a moment? So 70% of the 2% of the audience thought it is indeed Will Smith and Independence Day. And let's see who it actually is. It is Will Smith and Independence Day. That was an easy one. This is the warm-up question. All right, let's see how well you know your space cowboys.
Okay, I'm gonna look at you for
this
these ones.
Space cowboy must save the Earth by conspiring with an advanced space probe to redirect a ship back to the planet and restore life, falling in love along the way. Is this Michael Jordan in Space Jam? This is an animated space cowboy film, by the way. Or is this Buzz Lightyear, a.k.a. Chris Evans, which there was some controversy around that in the film Lightyear? You may have seen this already.
I have a 6-year-old.
Right? Is this Wall-E, a.k.a. voice actor Ben Burt in Wall-E? Or is this Captain Baker, a.k.a. Dwayne Johnson in Planet 51?
Okay, I'm trying so hard just to go off of my own edification, and this was the wrong question to do that with. I'm going Lightyear because it's in my head right now.
Okay, she's going Lightyear. 7% of the audience agree with you.
Wall-E.
Let's see
I think it's Wall-E.
what they think. It is Wall-E. 82% of you know your space cowboy films. All right.
You do. I didn't have a kid at that point.
For the next one, let's keep the results hidden until we call it up. So, all right. Just so that we don't give Bianca an extra hint.
Looking this way is a good method, too.
Okay, so this space cowboy must save the Earth by entering a black hole to complete a mathematical calculation while also traveling back in time to give his daughter the results of said calculation via a bookshelf. Was this Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar? Was this Chris Pine in 2009's Star Trek? Was this Lawrence Fishburne in Event Horizon, or was this Ernest Borgnine in The Black Hole? Who do you think?
I'm gonna go with a voice from the crowd that said black hole.
All right, so we had a strong
know
voice from the front row suggesting that it was Ernest Borgnine in The Black Hole. All these cowboys are saving the Earth from black holes in this case. Let's see what the audience thought. 80% of them, no, 76, 73, it's going down.
I believe
Thought
I'm
Matthew
so easily
McConaughey,
swayed.
70% now. All right, let's see what it really was. It is Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar.
You all know your space movies.
I feel like the
Look at
audience
you.
is space movie experts, but will they know this one? This space cowboy must save the Earth by drilling a hole in an asteroid large enough and quickly enough to bury and detonate a bomb that will split the asteroid in two before it enters the Earth's atmosphere. By the way, asteroid space cowboy movies, whole subgenre of space cowboy movies. You've fallen down a whole rabbit hole here. All right, is this Bruce Willis in Planet Terror? Is this Bruce Willis in Armageddon? Is this Bruce Willis in The Fifth Element? Or is this Bruce Willis in The Astronaut Farmer? All Bruce Willis space movies. How many have you seen, audience? Which do you think it is, Bianca?
It is the, oh my goodness, don't wanna close my eyes.
Yeah.
The one, yeah, Armageddon.
Okay. So 88% of you, 80. I wonder if anyone has even seen Bruce Willis in The Astronaut Farmer. By round of applause, how many of you have seen that film?
Dream will never do
Nobody
us
has seen it. I think it's from like 1988. It is in fact Bruce Willis in Armageddon, as 90% of you
Don't wanna miss your smile.
have suggested. All right, and finally, our last space cowboy themed question of the night. Are you ready, Bianca?
I'm as ready as I could be.
We'll do our best.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
this
out here.
space cowboy must save Earth, sacrificing himself in the process by launching a satellite that houses secret nuclear weapons into deep space before its orbit destabilizes and crashes into the Earth. Is this James Bond in Moonraker? Is this Tom Cruise in Oblivion? Is this George Clooney in Gravity? Or is this Tommy Lee Jones in Space Cowboys?
Ooh, I don't know any of these.
Don't show us yet what the audience thinks. Don't take it away. Okay.
Oh, can I get the answers one more time?
Okay. James Bond, and it's actually Roger Moore, but like it's better. James Bond in Moonraker. Is this Tom Cruise in Oblivion? Is this George Clooney in Gravity? Or is it Tommy Lee Jones in Space Cowboys? I'm sure you've seen all these films.
So many times. They're my go-to-sleep films. Not once have I seen them. George Clooney.
In Gravity.
In
All right,
Gravity.
Audience,
I
what
heard
did you
somebody
think?
say
Let's see what the
Gravity.
audience thinks. The audience, 100% of the audience. Oh no, okay. We're down. 92% of the audience.
I still believe it's Space Cowboy.
83%.
That would be a missed opportunity if one of the answers was not
So
Space
I will
Cowboy.
say that the audience thus far has been 4 for 4. You thus far have been 3 for 4.
Really?
Oh.
I
So
didn't
let's
say
see.
so.
Let's see what it is.
Yeah.
It is
Oh,
Tommy Lee
look at
Jones
him.
and Space Cowboys. I think we need harder questions for this audience.
I
They're really
know.
good.
You all came prepared.
They're
Give
really
yourselves
good.
a
Yes,
round
give
of
yourself-
applause.
Thank you for playing along with Space Cowboys. And thank you, Bianca,
Thank you so
for being a
much.
good sport and playing along as well. Okay, and that's halftime. Now, on with the show.
And now, on with the show.
All right, now it is my pleasure to introduce our next guest who will be talking about space via the Overview Effect. Rachel Lyons is a key advocate for the space movement. She believes in space as a vital tool for societal transformation. She is the executive director of Space for Humanity, a nonprofit organization which aims to use the spaceflight experience as a way to expand our perspective on Earth. Under her leadership, Space for Humanity has sent the first woman from the African continent and the first Mexican-born woman into space. Space for Humanity has received public support from the space industry's most prominent leaders, including Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, NASA astronauts, and many others. During her tenure, Lyons' team has cultivated a highly engaged online community of millions across the globe. She's a public speaker and a former radio host. She's been featured in outlets including CNN, NPR, Vice, the Associated Press, NBC News, Washington Post, and many more. She's spoken in front of large audiences like this around the world, so please give a warm welcome to Rachel Lyons.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay. It's good to be here with all of you. Just taking it in for a second. Okay. So my name is Rachel Lyons. I'm the executive director of Space for Humanity, and it is a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you today. To start, I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal story and what got me here, and then go into the overview effect and the greater mission that I'm currently on. So, a lot of people in the space industry have dreamt of space since they were little kids, and I was not one of those people. I never cared about space, didn't really understand it. It didn't make sense to me until I was 19 years old, and I was with a childhood friend who insisted on showing me the first episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos. And in this episode, Neil shows the scale of the universe. And he starts at the Earth and goes out to our solar system, to the Milky Way galaxy, to the local group of galaxies, and out, and out, and out, and out. And I was flabbergasted, learning this reality of our existence, that we live on a little tiny planet in an infinite universe. And it gave me a completely new reality to live in. Suddenly, I was just grateful to be here. I couldn't believe it. And I had this new love for people because I saw that we all share this planet together. And I had this new care for taking care of our environment as well because I saw just how special it is. And I became absolutely obsessed with space. I went into aerospace engineering. I joined every single space club you could possibly imagine at my school. All of my friends referred to me as Space Girl. And soon after, I discovered this thing called the Overview Effect, which is the cognitive shift in awareness, or the transformation, that happens to astronauts when they go to space and they look back and they see our planet.
Oh, golly, I remember going through launch, which is an overwhelming experience. The engines cut off. I felt myself floating out of the seat. I floated over to the window, looked out, and we were coming up over the coast of Africa. And that's when it hit me. I'm in space. And, I just got incredibly excited because it's something I had dreamed about since I was 6 years old.
I think you start out with this idea of what it's going to be like. And then when you do finally look at the Earth for the first time, you're overwhelmed by how much more beautiful it really is when you see it for real. It's just like it's this dynamic, alive place that you see glowing all the time.
It was truly incredible to be up there, doing what I always wanted to do my whole life, and then to kind of glance back at our planet and see that view was just tremendous.
I can only describe what I've seen. Looking down at the Earth, and you see that line that separates day into night slowly moving across the planet. Thunderstorms on the horizon casting these long shadows as the sun sets. And then watching the Earth come alive. And you see the lights from the cities and the towns.
The events you see from space, like flying over thunderstorms, looking at them from the top, were spectacular. Like a fireworks show going on, and you're looking at it from the very top.
Shooting stars going below us, or dancing curtains of auroras. It's just very hard to describe all the, the colors, the beauty, the motion.
After seeing the Earth from this vantage point, astronauts come back down completely changed people, with completely new perspectives about everything that is happening on our planet and all of our greatest challenges, from the environment to humanitarian issues to political issues to even just their place in their local community. And I personally believe that this perspective is the most important thing that we can take on right now, with all of our challenges being global in nature. So now I'm gonna go back in time a bit to the Apollo era. Apollo 8 was the first time we went around the moon. And so imagine being one of those astronauts in that capsule, going around the moon, coming back around the other side. And for the first time ever, the first time in all of history, we saw the Earth from this vantage point. It was like a marble in the sky, so small that it could be covered with your thumb. This image, called Earthrise, was actually called one of the most influential photographs of our time by Time magazine. And this image was plastered across TV screens, magazine covers, newspaper covers, and people from all around the world, millions, if not even billions of people saw this image. And it caused a collective paradigm shift. It caused people from all over the world to see the world in a new way and to see our existence in a new way. So much so that many historians actually say that the Earthrise image sparked the modern environmental movement. And what points to that happening is that within 3 years of this image being taken, the Environmental Protection Agency was founded, Earth Day was founded, a number of the leading organizations in the modern environmental movement were founded, Doctors Without Borders was founded, which that phrase, without borders, did not exist prior to us having this image. And a number of acts, specifically around the preservation of our environment, were enacted. And so why is it? Why is it that that image could have caused all of that to happen? It's because, well, what I believe, as well as a lot of other people that I work with, is that this image caused a collective paradigm shift, as I mentioned before. And so what do I mean by that? What do I mean by a collective paradigm shift? So I want to zoom out into a systems thinking lens. So looking at the Earth as the complex, interconnected system that it is. According to Dina Meadows, who is a systems change expert, she died in the early 2000s, she talks about how all complex systems have leverage points. And what leverage points are is they are places in a complex system where small shifts can lead to greater change. And so Dina talks about 12 different leverage points in the system. So 12 points where you could just create a small shift and a much greater change can happen. And she talks about the two most powerful places where small shifts lead to great change are number 2, recognizing the mindset or the paradigm out of which the system arises. And number 1 is transcending paradigms. And so that is what I believe happened here with the Earthrise image, is that it caused us collectively to transcend the paradigm that we were in, and in a way that brought urgency to taking care of our environment and creating systems from that. And I'm not here to say that space is the only way for us to transcend paradigms. There's a lot of ways that we can expand our perspectives, and a lot of ways that we can transform. There's meditation, or going to a beautiful vista and feeling awe from that view. There's the safe and effective use of psychedelics, which are an incredible tool to transcending paradigms in your own mind. Traveling to other cultures. Traveling to other cultures is an amazing way to gain empathy and understanding and awe around the beauty and the range of humanity. And of course, going to an incredible art museum and standing before a work of art and having it transport you to another time or another place. These are all ways to bring awe and to help us see bigger and think bigger and ultimately transform. And with the reality of the world right now, we need all the tools that we can get. And this is that moment for human spaceflight. This is that moment to use this perspective for the greater good. Thanks to all of these companies. So we've got Blue Origin, we've got SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Worldview, and Space Perspective. Those are both stratospheric balloon companies. They're projected to fly in 2024. They're very cool because you actually are flying in the stratosphere, looking at the curvature of the Earth for 4 to 8 hours. With Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, it's a suborbital ride. So you basically, it's like they call it a suborbital hop. So you just go up to space, you look back at the Earth, and then you come back down a few minutes later. And then with SpaceX, they do orbital rides. So some of you might be familiar with the Inspiration 4 mission. A friend of mine was actually on that mission. She went up to orbit. She was there for 4 days. She actually won from a Twitter contest. I'm not even joking. And now she speaks, and shares how profound this experience was for her for probably millions. And so what Space for Humanity is working to do is sponsor people from all over the world, people who are impact-oriented, people who have a sphere of influence, to go and have this experience so they can come back down and use it as a way to create greater change. And so all of these people, they might be on different missions. They might be working to address climate change or poverty or support access to education. But no matter what, this global perspective will support their vision and their work and help them go and bring it to the world in powerful ways. So a little bit about our program. We take applications on our website. And I know it might even sound crazy, but we are now in this new era where this is possible and it's not crazy anymore. That's the craziest part, is that it's not crazy anymore. So we take applications on our website. We select people based on their potential for impact. We've built out a pre-flight training program. So there's certain psychological characteristics. I think we lost my slide. Oh, wait. Or are these for me right now? Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's certain psychological characteristics that make someone more susceptible to profound experiences of the overview effect. And so that is what our pre-flight training is for. They go to space, they have that transformative experience of the overview effect, they come back down, and then we've built out an integration program. Because with any transformative experience, it's only going to be so effective if you don't take time to reflect and to ground and to make sense of it and to think about how you want to apply it to your life. So integration is a really important part of this. And then the third part of our program is the real-life application. So it's the social impact programs. It's the people going out and doing their thing as leaders in the world, sharing this perspective and using it as a way to forward causes that they care about. So the simplified version of our theory of change, which thank you to the Aspen Institute for lending this to us, is that personal transformation leads to greater societal transformation, especially if this personal transformation is being had by leaders and decision makers. Yeah, and a lot of people in the industry as well as outside agree with this theory of change and the importance of our work. Just last year, after Richard Branson went to space, we partnered up with him for a campaign that ended up bringing in $1.7 million to the mission of Space for Humanity, as well as randomly selecting out of 160,000 people, a woman from Antigua to go to space. And her name is Keisha. She will be bringing her daughter with her. They'll be the first people from the Caribbean to go to space, and likely the first mother-daughter duo to go to space as well, which is pretty cool. And then, just a few months ago, Space for Humanity got the opportunity to fly someone to space on Blue Origin. And this is the woman that we chose. Out of 7,000 applicants, we chose the person who became the first Mexican-born woman to go to space, Katia Echezarreta. And Katia is really passionate about STEM education, as well as helping people go from circumstances that might not look like they can create a career for themselves like this, to creating this career. And Katia has had a jaw-dropping impact from the moment that we announced this, that continues on. And she has been talked about in hundreds of news outlets all over the world. She was on Mario Lopez, she was on Ryan Seacrest's On Air. I think I can't remember this guy's name. I think it's George Ramos, maybe. And yeah, her impact has been astounding. And yeah, the last thing that I'll share about her is that she just spoke last week with the president of Mexico. So he cut STEM funding a few years ago, and so for her to bring that voice and bring her passion for it is really, really important. And then, just last week, we sent our second citizen astronaut to space with Blue Origin. Her name is Sarah Baie. She was the first woman from the African continent to go to space, as well as the first person from Egypt, which was really, really cool. And Sarah's still thinking about and working on what she wants her impact to be in the world. But the one thing that I'll share about Sarah is that I had the honor of getting to watch her come out of the crew capsule after she landed. And she was the first one out of the capsule, and the door was open, and she got out, and she just threw her hands up to the sky and looked up and was crying. She was so moved by the experience. And she said to me after that the view just enters you. Like you don't see the Earth from space. The view just enters you. And now she's going to live the rest of her life in her leadership roles with this deep, deep perspective. And I'm really excited to see what she does with that. Okay, so, yeah, like I said, our applications are open on our website. So if anyone wants to go to space, spaceforhumanity.org/apply. And the collective impact of our citizen astronauts is truly our greatest legacy. So in short, my ultimate goal is that every single person on this planet actually knows and understands that we live on a planet. And they understand what that means. It is interconnected, it is fragile, it is finite. It is an absolute miracle to be here. And in closing, I'm going to share a little excerpt from Carl Sagan. Just give me a second. So, Space for Humanity's mission is about using the space perspective to impact life on Earth right now and impact culture on Earth. And if it's fate for life to venture out into the universe, and we have the capabilities and the technology and the intellect, I think we must do it. And we can't bring the culture that we have right now out there. And so this is also what Space for Humanity is about.
We were hunters and foragers. The frontier was everywhere. We were bounded only by the earth and the ocean and the sky. The open road still softly calls. Our little terraqueous globe is the madhouse of those 100,000 millions of worlds. We who cannot even put our own planetary home in order, riven with rivalries and hatreds, are we to venture out into space? By the time we're ready to settle even the nearest other planetary systems, we will have changed. The simple passage of so many generations will have changed us. Necessity will have changed us. We're an adaptable species. It will not be we who reach Alpha Centauri and the other nearby stars. It will be a species very like us, but with more of our strengths and fewer of our weaknesses. More confident, far-seeing, capable, and prudent. For all our failings, despite our limitations and fallibilities, we humans are capable of greatness. What new wonders undreamt of in our time will we have wrought in another generation and another? How far will our nomadic species have wandered by the end of the next century and the next millennium? Our remote descendants, safely arrayed on many worlds through the solar system and beyond, will be unified by their common heritage, by their regard for their home planet, and by the knowledge that whatever other life may be, the only humans in all the universe come from Earth. They will gaze up and strain to find the blue dot in their skies. They will marvel at how vulnerable the repository of all our potential once was, how perilous our infancy, how humble our beginnings, how many rivers we had to cross before we found our way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was amazing. All right. Let's get started with the Q&A. Now is the time to call up those phones again and open the Q&A code. We're going to show you the QR code again if you'd like to play along on your second device. So be sure to include your name if you'd like to be eligible to win the prize. And we're going to bring up our speakers, and we're going to take questions now on both topics at the same time. So I'd like to invite back to the stage Nora and Rachel and Nora and Rachel. I'd love to invite you back to the stage. And the gong as well. And if you make a connection tonight, we are going to gong the gong, and it's a very nice sound. You'll enjoy it. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Mike. All right. Got the gong handy? Oops. More or less. And we'll go to the questions. So here we go. All right, we got a preview of those earlier. So one of the questions that was getting upvoted quite a bit while you were speaking, Rachel, is the question, how was the relationship between a cowboy and their horse similar to the relationship of an astronaut to their spaceship? This was a question, by the way, that Stephanie asked. I'm going to go ahead and gong that crossover question.
I can say the first thing that comes to mind. You ride it?
You traverse space of all sorts.
Okay, so we've got another question. This one comes from Scott. The Cowboy legend represents a fictitious, idolized past, while the over effect aims to instill a sense of imperiled future. Which will win out?
That is a really good question and a rather daunting one, I would say. I will just offer a quick response, which is that I hope it is not binary, and I hope that there is a third option that is based on fact, opportunity, joy, and love.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question is, here, hold on just a moment. Let me see if I can. The Cowboy legend represents, no, I've lost it. Sorry, when you're up on the front, you see it a little bit differently. I have lost the question from the archive.
That's okay.
Okay.
We'll move on.
Okay, here it is. The Cowboy legend represents a fictitious, idolized past, while the overview effect aims to instill a sense of our imperiled future. Which will win out? The idolized past, imperiled future.
And I said a third option.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope so. All right. Our next question tonight comes from Michael. And Michael asks, what are your thoughts on Jeff Bezos donning a cowboy hat during his press conference for the Blue Origin flight? Which is a thought that, I'm going to go ahead and go on that. That's a thought we all had when we saw that image. I'm sure that...
I don't, what's the thing of the picture that's worth 1,000 words? I don't know that I could really add more than what everyone is thinking in their own head about that image. It's quite powerful.
And I'm sure Rachel has a very different perspective.
Well, the fun fact is that when Jeff Bezos went to space, I'm pretty sure that he wore cowboy boots. And then
Can you wear that under your spacesuit?
I mean, he founded the company.
So yes, you can. If you built the spacecraft, you wear whatever you want. You can wear
exactly.
shorts.
So he's, you can make the rules, I guess. And he definitely put the cowboy hat on pretty quickly after landing.
Well, I think it is worth noting, as I learned from one of the exhibiting artists whose exhibition is currently on view at the museum, Clarissa Tosin, that, kind of this new chapter of space travel is thought of as the high frontier. And I think it's very powerful that a lot of the language that is used to discuss and address exploration of the outer limits of our universe is very similar to the language that many used, accurately or not, to describe the kind of open spaces, if you will, of our country, particularly in the 19th century and in the 20th century, describing the events of the 19th century.
There you go. All right. People like Bezos may be more akin to the myth of exploration and manhood than reality. How can we ensure space-goers have a meaningful but not mythical experience? I'm going to go on that.
Wait, I'm having trouble hearing you from here. How can we ensure that space who?
Okay, so the people like Bezos, more akin to myth, how can we ensure that space-goers have a meaningful but not mythical experience?
That's interesting. I have lots of answers for that one. One thing, I mean, I guess I would be curious what kind of, like, how this specifically could be mythical. I know with what I'm working on, a lot of times people can get really excited about the overview effect and then expect someone to have some sort of profound experience, and they come back and they're like, yeah, it was cool. So that, with my work, that would be the myth. And the way that we don't do that is that, one is we don't impose our worldview on anyone. Like, we don't tell anyone what they should make it mean. Yeah, and then two is we train to help people get ready to really have a profound experience. Yeah.
Is it often that they don't?
There's definitely been a few NASA astronauts that have come back and been like, I've
seen
but
better.
It's funny because I've also spoken to NASA astronauts that are like, yeah, they say they're not impacted, but their whole life is different. So
there you go. They just, they don't say it. All right. Did early cowboys experience the overview effect, seeing the vast open spaces of the West? Or were they fenced in by the greed, inspired by 160 acres and $30 a head? It's a nice question. That one comes from Anonymous. I'm going to go ahead and go on it.
I will probably answer in a more generalized way, but I think that there was likely some of that, but I do not think that that characterized the daily kind of even mundane and prosaic aspects of working in that extremely arduous and intensely laborious manner, where there were a number of unpredictable elements that were your everyday conditions. So I don't think that it was a lot of sitting on the porch and taking in the beautiful sunset. While I'm sure that that happened, I think we have to recognize that this was extremely difficult work and dealing with a lot of, again, unpredictable elements as much as there was a lot of predictability because you were repeating the labor quite often.
The mundane took over from the majestic.
Yeah, yes.
Do you have anything to add, Rachel? Do you feel that? No, okay. For astronauts, we're still in the majestic. The mundane hasn't taken over.
Actually, I could, yeah, I mean, the astronauts aren't like up there having the time of their life the whole time. You know, like they're, especially if you're a NASA astronaut on the International Space Station, you're very busy. And they barely even have time to look out the windows. So, yeah, and I've heard people compare it to like construction workers in space. You know, like they're like working on the International Space Station, doing science experiments. So that can get really mundane and repetitive. And it's also, it's an interesting connection is.
Are we allowed to make connections now?
You're allowed to make connections.
Okay,
encouraged, in fact.
I think it's dangerous. Yeah, it is dangerous to be up there and to be doing that work.
I would also imagine that you have to stay busy in order to not let the overview effect almost kind of evolve into maybe more fantastical effects.
Yeah, that's that's possible, but they're not trained for the overview effect. Like NASA astronauts aren't trained to go to space and have a transformative experience. Like they're trained to go and do science and tech and stay busy doing that. And some of them are so like laser focused on that vision that they don't even spend much time looking out the window.
Well, we should have a talk with them.
No.
I know. That's why I'm here.
There you go. All right, this question comes from Tanner. He asked, or she, I don't want to presume, how do you think we have and will approach space as the new frontier differently than from how we treated the West as a new frontier? Which is a great question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, let's see.
Oh, I'm going to calm down. Got so caught up in the thoughtfulness of the question. Not my job.
I don't know if I can expertly answer this question, so I'm just conscientious about that. But I'm thinking about a talk that the founder of my company gave. His name's Dylan Taylor, and he recently went to space as well. And he talked about how space is a technology. We have the opportunity to build this technology consciously. We have the opportunity to think about what we're building and think about how we want to build it and think about how we want to be as we build it. Whereas I think a lot of times when we're just going for things, we don't think about it so consciously. So that is my hope, as well as I know everyone on my team and a lot of people in the industry's hope as well.
Again, I would probably reference one of the exhibiting artists, Clarissa's work, that is kind of looking into the future around how both private industry and science, government-led science, are thinking about exploring and occupying and building on and living on other planets and or the moon, and what the possibilities of that entail and what the dangers of that entail as well. And so I think, to your point, understanding how and why we are going to these far reaches, and to do so responsibly, to kind of heed the lessons of our past in order to be able to proceed ever more thoughtfully, I think is the way forward, and it's hopefully the way things are going. You know more about that than I do.
Yeah, I can just add to that there's countless organizations and people that are exactly doing that, being we can't do it the way we did it in the past. We must do it newly. And the commercial spaceflight companies, as well as I would say NASA and other governmental ones, a lot of times are partnering with these organizations and supporting these organizations. So I would never say that the leadership in this industry is perfect, and I am hopeful.
All right. I think we have time for one more question tonight. This one comes from Zia, and Zia asks, we saw cowboys weren't all straight white males like we've seen in movies. What are some of the misperceptions about astronauts and the importance of space?
Great questions tonight.
What are some of the misconceptions about astronauts and the importance of space?
What are misperceptions about astronauts and the importance of space?
It's a great question. I mean, I guess I would have to hear, what do you think about astronauts? I mean, I can tell you, I know that one of the quickest questions that people ask is, how do you go to the bathroom on the International Space Station? I wouldn't call it a misperception. I would say the biggest misperception by the public right now is that the people who are part of the space movement don't care about our planet, and that it's we're choosing to go to space, and by that we're negating any of the challenges on our planet, and we don't care about the environment. That is the biggest public misconception right now. And the way that I would respond to something like that is in a number of different ways. But I mean, the overview effect, I think, for me, is the most compelling. And the technology that's developed by the space industry has helped countless other industries. Most of the people that I know that are working in space say that we do this for Earth. We do this because it benefits life on Earth. And there's so many technologies that have been built that have contributed to incredible things on our planet. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is that it's just for it's like the Billionaires Boys Club, and they don't care about our planet.
I think you're right that's probably a common perception. So yeah, get to debunk that.
Yeah.
Well, please give another round of applause for Nora and for Rachel. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, now is the time of the night that is prize time. I think we have yes, prize time. It's prize time. All right, we have chosen, in fact, Mike Zbrinek, our production manager, has chosen his favorite connection of the night, and he is going to, oh, no, my lovely assistant is going to bring me an envelope with, oh, there she is. Thank you. Thank you, assistant. Round of applause from my assistant. And Mike has chosen his favorite question of the night, which is, how do you think we have and will approach space as the new frontier differently from how we treated the West as the new frontier? That was a great question. And Tanner asked that question. So if you are Tanner, you can email programs@mcadenver.org to collect your prize. And your prize tonight is 2 VIP tickets to the exhibition opening Dirty South that will be held at MCA Denver on Friday, September 16th. It is going to be a great exhibition and an even better party. So I really hope you're 21, Tanner. Anyway. I am now very pleased to invite back Bianca to the stage to enlighten us with an original poem inspired by tonight's talks. Bianca Mikhan is an MC, she's a poet, a digital composer, a cultural activist, and an educator. She's the executive director of the youth mental health-based organization Check Your Head, and a partner artist with leading creative educators, Creative Strategies for Change, Youth on Record, and Think 360. So please give a warm welcome to Bianca Mikhan.
Oh my goodness. Give it up for all the amazing speakers. Wasn't this incredible? Let's see what she did about it. Rumor has it we are made of stardust, and we adore a horizon. I imagine space for humanity could be what our native neighbors called Turtle Island, this little continent on this tiny marble spinning. I imagine they had cultural recognition that this is a place to exist and exchange, to observe and honor, an ever-expanding beginning with no need for taming. Maybe it requires a cowboy's spirit to approach the sky. That is to say, a hopeful something that doesn't yet exist, but could someday. I'd like to believe that the descendants of Buffalo soldiers will one day witness our Earth's curvature with their own eyes, fulfilling those leathered legacies never once published in Americana canon. I wonder if we, from space, could chart how rivers shifted by cattle driven too forcefully, as colonization became a snake considering the flavor of its own tail. Ranch hands on the trail knew more of the constellations than light-polluted eyes might ever. Most myths are born as their source reality dies. As stars shine, romanticized centuries after its light is extinguished. And we find ourselves at a leverage point on a floating rock, offering an endless supply of awe. And I, for one, am more than ready to saddle up.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, audience, for joining us tonight. If you have a moment, please fill out the survey you get on your phones. It helps us out so much. I think there's a QR code. I don't know. It'll come somehow. And we hope to see you next week for our final week of the 2022 Mixed Taste season with Free Will and Zombie Deer. We'll see you then. Have a great night.